Penn State fans, Bob Flounders here with Max Ralph. I feel like Max, this is a little bit of a hangover week for if you're a Penn State fan in terms of, I think there's probably a lot of Penn State fans, even if they weren't at the game, especially if they were at the game, that are just not going to be over. They're not going to be over what they saw in the Oregon game. It's great that Penn State fought back a little bit there, but I think Penn State fans are just for such long stretches in that game. Our game was clearly better, and I don't know if Penn State had won that game, Max. I kind of feel like Oregon would have felt a little bit cheated because they clearly, I think we talked, they were much better in a whiteout for 80% of the game. I think you give Penn State a lot of credit for fighting back, but on a neutral field, this would have been a mismatch in my mind. So James Franklin was in recovery mode, in let's turn the page mode. Let's not forget last year's national champion had 2 losses mode. And it's probably the right thing to do. This is kind of almost, it's mean to say, Max, it's almost like a third bye week for Penn State this week going out to UCLA. I know it's cruel, but there's some merit with that. They have a little window now. If there's anything that can be fixed, Max, the next 2 weeks are the weeks to do it because after this, it's Northwestern at home. So I've been talking a lot. Max, how are you doing? Congratulations not only to your Cubs, but also, I mean, Penn State fans that are just listening to this, Max has his Bears baseball cap on. That was a pretty gutty win that they had on the road against the Raiders. I'm not wearing a Bucky's visor. I'm wearing a Cowboys visor only because I told Max when you've sunk this low, we celebrate ties. We like James says, we celebrate every win. I celebrate every win and also ties, which they did with Green Bay last night. Max, how you doing? What's on your mind?
Bob, I had a good non-work weekend with the Cubs sweeping the Cardinals and the Bears winning. Bears had no business winning that game, but I am glad to see them win a bit of a gutty performance because they need that. I like Ben Johnson. I think that's an extension of him. And I got to say, like the Cowboys showing the Packers, they're no joke. Felt pretty good as a Bears fan too, considering the Bears, kind of trounced the Cowboys. So that was cool.
Bet the ranch this week, Penn State listeners. Whoever Dallas is playing, just bet the money. But bet the ranch money line on who they're playing.
Yeah,
they're gonna let it down. That's what they do best.
Yeah, Bob. I don't know. I have so many lingering thoughts from Saturday night.
Yeah.
Like I think we could sit here for 3 hours and go on a bunch of different tangents about certain aspects of the game, about, whether you're impressed by the fact that Penn State came back, whether it was all bad and it was an empty rally. Like there are just so many angles. I do think, as you and I talked about a little bit outside of the pod, that Oregon team is damn good. They reloaded in the portal and brought in some guys who are even better than the team that, went into the college football playoff as the country's #1 team last year. Dante Moore, unbelievable. The guy didn't really do anything like crazy special. There weren't a ton of explosive plays, but for him to come into the whiteout and just pretty much seem unfazed, like really good stuff. They've got a bunch of running backs who look like they've got some juice.
Yep.
They were more physical than Penn State in the trenches. Like I will say, after what Penn State did to Oregon on the ground in the Big Ten championship game last year, I was wholly shocked and impressed by Oregon's defensive line. The transfers they brought in are really good, really physical. They came out and showed Penn State what for up front. And there's a point to be made about Dan Lanning. He was
fearless.
He was aggressive.
Fearless and confident. He reeks of it in the best way possible.
Yes.
That 4th down decision early in the fourth quarter where they could have made it a 10-point game, and it was 7-3. No, yeah, it was. I forgot what it was. It was. They could have made it 13-3. Excuse me. And he didn't. He took a timeout, didn't bat an eye, and that offensive line opened up a hole, and that guy walked into the end zone.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm stunned that Penn State came back from that, but I think it just speaks to Dan Lanning I think if you're the Oregon team and you win in the whiteout and you win the way you did, I think it's just going to help them. There is no environment, Max, that they're going to be in the rest of the way
Yeah.
that is going to be more challenging than this one. I doubt very seriously that they're going to face a better defense. And if they do face one, it'll probably be Ohio State. But I don't know that Ohio State's that much better defensively. I just think from top to bottom, the way they're coached, the talent they have, the offensive line was murdering people up front, other than denied Dennis Sutton. Like, it was a bad day for a lot of Penn State defensive linemen. I just think that if you're a Penn State fan, it cannot be lost on you how impressive Oregon looked. I know you're upset with your team, but that was a really good team. Penn State took to overtime.
Yeah, I think Dan Lanning has a certain Lane Kiffin-ness to him, where it's like he's willing to go out and say things. But I think that the thing that Lanning has about him is it comes off a little less cocky and a little more confident.
Yeah.
I think that the energy that he brings, the outgoingness, the confidence, I think it really translates to his team in a good way. It like Oregon did not come out and they don't think they're all that in the way that they overplay, they make mistakes out of pure arrogance. They play confident, they play smooth.
Yeah.
Lanning, I'm just saying, like, if I was a college football recruit right now, with everything going on for Oregon, between the NIL dollars that they get from Nike, with all the uniform combinations, with the Big Ten support, with Dan Lanning at the helm, I'm not sure there's anywhere else I'd want to go. But this is a Penn State podcast.
Yeah, James Franklin's going to appreciate that when he does listen to. I'm sure he listens to all our podcasts.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure he's going to appreciate those comments. Your honesty, he's going to really cherish that, James. But you're Max. But you're not wrong.
I might get a dirty look at practice.
You are not wrong in what you're saying. I was struck by other than the linebackers, the Penn State linebackers denied Dennis Sutton and the guys in the secondary.
Yeah.
I guess what I would say is, watching that up close, watching it play out, I was struck by, like, Penn State looked like a plodding team at every other position compared to Oregon. They just looked quicker, more decisive, and more athletic at quarterback, at running back, at wideout, at tight end. I mentioned Denai, who I thought, the stat line's not going to do what he did justice. James talked about the fact I thought he was held at least twice in the game. I don't think that's sour grapes. I thought that he was literally grabbed. But it just felt to me like Penn State was hanging on for dear life for about 50 minutes. Oregon took its foot off the gas for just one possession, and then, Penn State pounced, to their credit. But, Max, we get into overtime, and it's a fourth-year quarterback who began the season in the first round, firmly in the first round conversation, and he just makes an awful decision with the game on the line, and you cannot. He makes a decision you can't make when you're in sudden death, and if you don't score a touchdown, the game's over. James kind of referenced it. I still shake my head about Drew's decision right there. I don't think there's any defense for it.
Yeah, the entirety of the game goes to a lot of different layers. Like you said, Penn State was beat up front. This offensive line is potentially my number one concern right now, leaving that game against Oregon.
Yeah.
I do think, like, Penn State gets a lot of credit in my mind for even making that a game and sending it to overtime. I think that is proof that this team has the potential to go where we all kind of thought it would. But I will say, as my overarching takeaway, the things that contributed to that loss are kind of exactly the questions that we had coming into the season, and we still don't have answers for, minus the offensive line, which we did not expect to struggle like this. But Drew Allar did have the back-breaking play at the end, and you're right, there's no way to slice it. I mean, Oregon had it covered the whole way. Drew claimed after the game that he saw him and was trying to throw over his head. I have two thoughts. Like, number one, I'm not sure if I totally believe him, because he kind of threw it right at the safety. And number two, even if he did, there was another corner playing over top of that route who actually cracked Reynolds into the ground on the other side of that play. Yeah. So it was well covered. It's a route that, Penn State runs a lot and has had a lot of success on, but Oregon was ready for it, and a big credit to their defense. The entire game is not on Drew Allar by any means. I think that there are some larger concerns with the offensive line with the running backs, the run game, and honestly, Andy Kotelnicki, which I know a lot of fans are thinking. But James Franklin, mentioned some stuff that I think we're going to get to today in terms of play calling and everything. But when it boils down to it, with the game on the line there, Drew Allar, with 33 career starts, was the one who, made the play that ended it.
I mean, he only went after maybe the most athletic safety in the country. Like this wasn't not just like a honorable mention All Big Ten play. This is a guy that might go in the first round who was literally tracking Drew. You could kind of see the play in the replay. He was like, please, dear God, Drew, you're thinking about, please throw it. Just throw it. Oh, you did throw it.
He sat under it. He sagged, like he was on it and he sagged back under it. And then as soon as he threw it, he looked like a kid in the candy store. Yeah. It was bad, but not to pile on too much because there were a lot of other issues in that game.
Yeah. And let's get to this. So Max, I wrote a little bit about it because James talked about it. We talked about it. So the first down has been an issue. First down and third down are married together. If you don't get any yards on first down and you're in third and long against an athletic defense, good luck. I mean, they are tied together. You mentioned Kotelnicki. My thing is at this point, and we talked about it before we got on the podcast, in a season where you spend all this money to bring people back, you pay the quarterback, you get the offensive line back, you go into the transfer portal, you add 3, not 1, not 2, you add 3 wide receivers to address the biggest need on the team. You get a very, very good linebacker to fortify what kind of looked like it could be a weakness because of depth in Amari Campbell. You do all these things knowing that, I don't know what Penn State fans think, Max. I don't know what you think, but this team next year is not really going to be built, I think, constructed to kind of go all in the way that they did this year. You do all of that, and then in a big game where you have a decided atmosphere edge, which is Dan Lanning said, hey, it's got to be should be worth a touchdown. It didn't feel like it was tonight. At what point, Max, does James Franklin look in the mirror and say to himself, you know what we're going to do on offense? We're not good on first down. We haven't been good on third down. And we've done it against Nevada, Florida International, and Villanova. It hasn't just been Oregon.
Yeah.
At what point does he make the decision? You know what? Hard feelings aside, we're going to make sure we get the ball to 3 or 4 players on most of our snaps. Whether it's Katron Allen, whether it is Devontae Ross, whether it's Trevor Pena, or whether it's Luke Reynolds. Now, Luke Reynolds, it wasn't his fault that Drew threw the ball, but I still think he is one of the top playmakers on the offense. Mm-hmm. Nick Singleton, God bless him, he's going to leave here with a lot of yards. He's going to be probably the career total yardage leader. He's probably going to be that guy. But he has not been that guy this year. I listened to Stan Drayton last week talk about him being ready to explode. It's going to translate. And he certainly played hard against Oregon, but it's just been more of the same. He looks a little indecisive, unsure of himself. Katron is not indecisive. I just think if you want to get better on first down, if you want to get better on third down, if you want to make life easier for Drew and the offensive line, just get the ball to your best players on offense, and the other guys can get the scraps. And I am including Nick Singleton almost as an afterthought at this point.
It really boils down to look at the fourth quarter drive that Penn State put together when it scored in 5 plays, I think. It went to a quick hitter to Luke Reynolds across the middle of the field, schemed him open on a nice crossing route. Easy rhythm throw for Drew Allar. Guess what? Next play, another really easy rhythm throw out in the flat to Pena, who has the ability to get out in space, make a guy miss, and pick up a few extra yards. And then you get the ball to Katron Allen, who weaves his way through an outside zone to pick up, 15 or 20. And then you hit the deep ball to Devontae Ross, who we've heard all offseason has the ability to do that. And that is the first time.
Where was that all game? Where was it all game?
Entirety of a top 6 matchup in the whiteout that you get your quarterback in rhythm, that you go to your bread and butter, you go to your playmakers, and that is on Andy Kotelnicki. Why are you not doing that sooner? It's not always going to work. Oregon's a good defense. They're gonna take some of those guys away.
Yeah.
But those are your guys. You have to go to them. And I think, honestly, the bigger indictment is on the fact that Drew Allar, I didn't look at what his average depth of target was. I didn't look at route combinations, whatever. But there was not quick, easy throws for him. There were no 5-10 yard hitch routes to the outside to let him
Oregon
get
had
rhythm.
a ton of those too.
Oregon had a ton of those. Look, DeCorian Moore, how he caught he bobbled and then caught a slant route against AJ Harris. But there's stuff like that Penn State just has to do. Your wide receivers are good enough. They are not the top unit in the country or anything, but they're good enough to win on certain routes. They are. And you have to allow them to do that. You have to allow Drew Allar to get into a rhythm. And maybe at that point, those end-of-game decisions don't happen where they end up losing in a big situation. And Nick Singleton, look, I absolve him of all the blame because when you watch the game on Saturday night, he was getting hit at the line of scrimmage or in the backfield quite a bit. But there are also still plays where if he makes one cut, if he makes the right choice, they can break for 15, 20, 60 yards. And he's not doing it, and Katron Allen is. His vision is better. He is a spark. He is the spark right now for Penn State. Like his runs in the fourth quarter, you and I in the press box are just kind of sitting there laughing. Like he's not going down. It takes the entire 11 guys on defense to get that guy down. He is the spark for Penn State's offense right now, and he needs to touch the ball 20, 25 times a game. 14 against Oregon is not enough, and he only had 4 carries in the first half. He has to be a bell cow.
Yeah. Well said, well spoken, in detail. Everything to me, I think if you're watching this Blue White Breakdown podcast or you're listening to it, you're either shaking your head or you're nodding because I think I'm sure they're thinking right along with us, Max. It's puzzling, and I think if you're a Penn State fan that has watched this team and has watched this offense, you're probably infuriated because it looks they're making life way too hard on themselves. Like this is not any other year. Like the coddling of the running backs began in earnest, I think, in 2023. Nick had the better true freshman season. He was explosive, had the Rose Bowl run, and there were some uneven moments in 2023. James talked about Katron not being healthy coming into the season. There might have been something to that we didn't know about, but it just seemed like, hey, we don't want anyone unhappy. We got to make sure this guy scored. Well, let's make sure this guy scores in a blowout because, look, your backs are to the wall. I'm not so sure, Max. If they lose another game, I don't know if they're going to go to the playoff. I really don't, depending on how they lose and who they lose to.
As long as it's Ohio State, I think it's fine. But yes, point well taken.
I mean, Max, if they lose by 27 points, I don't care. I don't care about I think, and that I'm telling you, if this is the offensive game plan, that could happen. And Ohio State would not mind doing it too. They would not mind. No. I'm really, really struggling that this was the best they could come up with planning wise after essentially having a whole month to get ready for this game because I don't really count the non-conference schedule as anything very problematic. Max, I just wanted to get to one more thing that was really irking me, and the more that I thought about it, in a close game, in a 3-3 game, I am still rankled about the 3rd and 8 or 9 call when they were in the third quarter, when they're on the very precipice of maybe at least moving into very solid field goal position. I think it was 3rd and 9 or 3rd and 8. It looked like it was a keeper all the way. Drew kind of hesitated, but he pulled it down right away. And he's 6'5", 240. It just takes him a little while to get moving. The Oregon defenders were quicker than him. I think he might have gotten a yard. So they're at the 36 now. I want to say it's 4th and 9. And they could have done a number of things. I think there were 3, right? You punt, you could go for it, which probably would have been stupid. Or you could let Ryan Barker try to kick a field goal that was 4 yards longer than the 49-yarder he had made. I thought it looked pretty good there in the first half. I just didn't agree with that decision. It ended up being a touchback. Oregon scored, and I think they went 80 yards in 10 plays or 8 plays. To me, I just think I get not going for it. I'm bothered by the 3rd down call, number 1. And I would have, given what Ryan Barker has done the last 2 years, I would have given him a shot. I just think they picked the wrong decision in a game where you can't pick a wrong decision.
I agree. And honestly, Bob, I think that was a huge turning point in the game. Obviously, Penn State made its comeback after that. But I thought that was a huge turning point. I thought in that moment the game could have been over there. And I was surprised too, because I really felt like after the Ohio State game last year, James Franklin became a more aggressive coach. Like the fourth down against Minnesota is something we wouldn't have seen 5 years ago. Like I felt like there was a tangible shift in his coaching philosophy last season after another big game loss. Felt like he's gone for it on more fourth downs than he has. I don't have the numbers to back that up, but it just seemed like he was kind of acknowledging, like, okay, it's go time. I have a good team. I have a championship window here. I need to act like it. And that sequence was exactly the opposite. That was playing scared. That was saying, yeah, my defense has been fantastic. Let's send them back out there again, without realizing they'd already been on the field for 30 freaking minutes at that point. You know, like I was surprised by the decision. I'd come to expect over the last 8 or 9 games better from James Franklin. I obviously didn't like the third down call because it didn't work out. If it was a read option, I think Drew made the wrong read. If it was designed, I think it was a bad play call. But I do think it was called with the intent of getting 4 yards at least and then going for it on fourth down. That philosophy is fine, in my opinion. I like going for it on fourth there, but it wasn't the right play call on 3rd and 9. And then just like, why are you punting the ball? Like, yes, Ryan Barker has had a fantastic start to the season. He was very consistent last year. His only miss from that distance is a blocked kick that was not his fault. The right side of the line completely collapsed. And if you're not comfortable with Ryan Barker,
why tell us that Gabe Nwosu made a 65-yard field goal?
And continue every time that they bring that up, James Franklin says he was almost taking Barker's job, and that's not an indictment on Barker. That's a compliment to Nwosu because they're very confident in Ryan Barker. If Nwosu has the leg to make a 62-yarder in the stadium, you should be able to make a 55-yard field, whatever it was.
53-yarder, yeah.
A 53-yard field. There are a lot of things that went wrong in that game, but that sequence was really mind-boggling because it was so not what we've come to expect from Penn State, and it was almost like surrendering, and that was a big problem. I don't know. There's a lot of problems, but that one, I'm glad you brought it up, Bob, because that was frustrating.
Oh, yeah. Max, one more thing. I mean, we could talk about UCLA, but Penn State fans will. They're going to watch the game, but yeah. I brought this up with Johnny on a podcast in the spring. I think I brought it up with you a couple of weeks ago. I maintained that as good as this Penn State team could be, if they ironed out some offensive issues, and as good as I think the secondary, the safeties, and now the linebackers can be with the addition of Amari Campbell, assuming good health. My Achilles heel for Penn State in a big game was what happens in a game where in the second half it's close and the other team commits to running the ball against specifically Penn State's defensive front. Because, they're a little light in the ass. I think Penn State fans know that. Other than Deny, they don't have a really big defensive end. Zane Durant is a powerful human being, but I think he's a little bit less than 300 pounds. I know they like Gilliam, but he's still a second-year player. Alonzo Fort's coming off a major injury inside. There were a couple players, that showed promise at tackle that we didn't really see against Oregon, and Nia White being one of them. My concern was what happens in a close game if the other team just decides to shove it right down their mouth, and it's not going away, right? If Iowa has a lead at some point or it's tied in the second half and they're at home, or if Indiana gets in a tight game with them at Beaver Stadium, or they got to go out to Columbus and they're either up or down 4 in the third quarter, they're going to see it, right? They're going to see it. They're going to say, okay, we're going to tire Deny out, and we're going to see what happens when you put the backups in the game and whether you can stop us. To me, I do think, as much as I really like this defense, and I know that Jim Knowles is aware of it, that's another thing that I am very mindful of the next time Penn State faces a challenging team that has some running backs and an offensive line that can get some push, because I think it's going to come up again.
Well, listen, Ohio State and Indiana both have good offensive lines and good running backs. So, yes, it will come up again. Bob, your point there is exactly what I asked James Franklin about in his press conference today. we knew coming into the season that there were some depth questions on defense. We knew the top level of the defense could be one of the best in the country, and I think they proved that against Oregon. I mean, the starting defensive front, the starting linebackers, starting safety, secondary, they all played very well. You hold Oregon to 17 points in regulation, it's very good.
Absolutely.
But there were concerns about depth at linebacker and at every defensive line spot, and to a lesser extent at safety as well, because you lost 3 guys last year, or 2 guys,
Mm-hmm.
2 guys last year.
To the NFL.
Yeah, there were concerns. I will say the offensive line struggling was not one of our offseason concerns, and that is one of the big ones right now. But we saw in the Oregon game, our probably biggest offseason concern is still a concern. Zachy Wheatley and King Mack played all 80 defensive snaps, and we continue to hear how there's still a competition at safety. That just clearly isn't true, because those guys played all 80 snaps. Now, I will say, both of them played well. I saw flashes from both of them that made big plays. Not the biggest concern compared to these other 2 positions I'm going to highlight, but I don't know where that competition is, because it didn't happen. At linebacker, Amari Campbell is a freaking stud. I mean, he played his ass off and very well, very well. Same with Tony Rojas. He played very well. We knew those 2 guys were going to be very good. But behind them, Dom DeLuca only played 17 snaps. Anthony Specca played 2. When James Franklin talks about his defense getting tired out in the fourth quarter and in overtime, that can play a part of it in it.
I think it did. You saw what happened in over. They went right down the field. You know what I mean?
You can't have your 2 starting linebackers, your 2 starting safeties play 75 plus snaps and never come off the field. And it's not an indictment on them, because of course those guys are going to be tired. It's an indictment on the fact that there's nobody behind them who's comfortable enough, who Penn State's confident in enough to get on the field. And the same issue reared its head at defensive tackle and defensive end, Deny Dennis Sutton and Zariah Fisher, who, again, played very good games. They played hard. They battled with Oregon's offensive line. But behind them, Chaz Coleman got 17 snaps, and we knew Chaz Coleman was not as good in the run as he was in the pass. And then Jalen Harvey played 8 snaps. Deny Dennis Sutton and Zariah Fisher were on the field a lot. And behind Zane Durant, Xavier Gilliam and Alonzo Ford both played a lot, but it was really just a 3-man rotation when we thought it could or maybe even should be 4 or 5, and it just didn't happen. Even Zane was getting blown up on double teams. Oregon's offensive line really won in the trenches, and I'm concerned about the depth on defense. For 3 quarters, Penn State can play with anybody, but when you get to the nitty gritty, you got to have guys who are able to give a breather to that top group, and it didn't happen. Asked James Franklin about it, and he said, well, part of that is why we played so many guys in the first 3 weeks, so that we could keep our starters fresh. And sure, they were healthy. Those guys were healthy and played all those snaps. But I still think there's an aspect of this that you play that depth in the first few weeks in order to get them comfortable in the field and in the scheme. And that was also what James Franklin said today. So he kind of said both things, and I'm not really it just it didn't work out that way. It didn't work out in favor of
You can't have it both ways, James. You just can't have it both ways. You really can't. It was a fair question. I think he knew that you had him a little bit, but I don't think he wanted to. I don't think the 2 days after they lost to Oregon, he wanted to admit it. But I do think he had him. I think he had him on roller skates, but he can be a political animal at times, and he just deflected rather than embracing. He said he was embracing expectations this year. I don't know that he embraced your question, in all fairness, Max. But I guess if I was James, I probably would have tried to wiggle away from that one as well, because I don't think he was expecting someone to call him on something that detailed. But I do think in the long run, you had him. If it had been a chess match, it would have been checkmate. But it's just not. He wasn't willing to give you the W. But I think the people who are listening and watching this, I think they're probably nodding their heads and saying, "Yeah, I think Max did have him." So I just want to say this. I think if Penn State is going to regroup, and I still think that is possible if they make some significant changes and commit to some certain people, and also put some other people in the background, I think there's a world in which that can happen. I'm not completely bought in, but I'm going to say this, Max. The one player that Penn State cannot afford to lose is absolutely deny Dennis Sutton.
Oh,
It
yeah.
is not anyone else. There is not a close second. It speaks to some depth that they have at other positions, but it also speaks to just how unique this guy is. There were some NFL scouts in attendance, and you know what? For whatever the stat line said Denai did, I don't even care. He was a man among boys out there when he wanted to be. The tackles that Oregon had were pretty good, but even then, they had every snap, Max, the fury and the athleticism he brought it on every snap. He was legitimately held a couple of times. They didn't call it. James Franklin referenced it. It's not sour grapes, but the impact that he can have on a game, there is no one else there was no one else on him, no one else on the team like him. And I just think if something happens to him, they might as well I don't know what they could possibly hope to do against a good offense and a good offensive line. He's just been incredible. And I just wanted to circle back to your safeties point. So early on, I was struck because, I think it was the week before the Nevada game. I think Frank Bodani asked him about who was starting at safety opposite Zakee Wheatley, and he mentioned Belgrave Shorter. And he talked about how he had a great offseason. It's not a surprise to us. There's been a lot of buzz about, I'm paraphrasing, a lot of buzz about him in the program. And then shortly after the season started, James was going back to, well, I just don't think we're playing fast enough on defense. I think we can play faster on defense. And lo and behold, I think it was before the third game against Villanova, King Mack had played a lot in the second game, and I think he started against Villanova.
He did.
I think he all but said, Belgrade, we wanted to get faster. So my question is, if they're concerned in Big Ten play about speed at safety, I don't think they want to put Belgrave Shorter on the field. And if they don't want to put him on the field, how are Wheatley and King Mack not going to play 70 snaps a game unless it's a blowout?
No, it's a very valid point, and I think that what we've seen through 4 games, there is a clear separation between King Mack and Belgrave Shorter, but they need him to be able to play. And I don't know if it's a pure talent for when I say talent, I mean if it's simply the fact that King Mack is faster than Belgrave Shorter because he is
and not reacting quick enough. I got you.
That's where I'm going. Was Belgrave Shorter handling the on-field communication in the way they wanted him to? Was he processing fast enough? I don't know. I think that when James keeps saying they want to get faster, I do think that is that's part of it. It's not actually just flat out speed. I think it's the processing speed, and apparently King Mack has done that better. But I mean, it all boils down to, Bob, we knew that depth was a concern, and as well as the defense played against Oregon, that concern has not been allayed in any way.
Yeah. Max, there's one more. It just popped into my questionable brain right now, but let's just talk about this to close out this blue-white breakdown where we managed not to really talk about UCLA, but I think Penn State fans are glad.
James didn't talk about UCLA in his press conference, so why? Yeah.
I think, Max, you could probably say this right now after the loss to Oregon. I think Penn State's regular season is going to be really 2 half seasons. So they had all preseason, and they had the 3 non-conference games to get ready for the whiteout and to get ready for Oregon. And the plan didn't work. Whatever they were doing, they weren't good enough, or it could have been both, or the plan just it didn't work. I would make the argument that they have a second season starting right now. You have UCLA, a rudderless ship. Then you have Northwestern at home. And then you're going to have to go to Iowa. You're going to get another bye week. Then you're going to have to go to Ohio State. And then you're going to get a very tricky, very treacherous, very talented, that's 3 T's, Indiana team coming in. And that team is full of confidence. Mm-hmm. They found a way to win at Iowa, and it's never really that. I mean, I think after a big blowout win, I think they were a little bit flat, but they figured out a way to do it, and it was a big game for Iowa. I think this is really 2 regular seasons, right? You had a build-up to the Oregon game, and now you're going to have a little runway now to right the ship for at Iowa, at Ohio State, and then Indiana coming in. And I just am very curious. I know James Franklin thinks about this stuff. How will he tweak the time he has to get ready for those 3 games, because it's almost similar, Max, in terms of we have time, we got to be better. What's the plan to get better for the big games?
Yeah, that's kind of that's the question to answer, right? Like we don't. James Franklin's got to have that answer.
Yeah,
The one thing I will say, and fans don't ever want to hear it, but he's right, is the fact that Ohio State lost 2 games in the regular season last year and went on and won a national championship. Like it sucks to hear after losing the whiteout in that fashion, but Penn State really does have to push that behind them and make sure that it doesn't snowball right now. That's what has to happen next. Like 2 top 10 games against Ohio State and Indiana are still on the schedule. And if you feel differently, Bob, I totally understand. But I do think as long as you win one of those 2, you're making the playoff. I think because of the way the SEC cannibalized itself last year and probably will do so again this year, I think a 10-2 Big Ten team gets in pretty easily. That's my opinion, but other people can certainly feel differently. It boils down to getting the offense consistent, because for as much as those concerns do exist on the defensive side with depth, as long as they're not on the field for 33 of the first 40 minutes of the game, like it's not a problem. Like you will be able to get those guys more rest. The offense has to figure it out. And I think as much as Drew Allar needs to play better, as much as Andy Kotelnicki needs to call a better scheme, I genuinely think like it starts up front with the offensive line. There is no reason that a team that returned all 5 guys from last season, obviously Anthony Donko moved from right tackle to right guard, but all 5 guys started last season in some capacity. There's no reason for how poorly they've played. They were completely out-physicaled. I'm getting in my coach speak and using physical as a verb.
sure.
They were completely out-physicaled against Oregon, and it's contributing to guys like Nick Singleton not breaking long runs. I think I've been especially surprised by the regression I've seen from Nolan Rucci, because I thought he was simply fantastic in the playoff last year. I think like Donko's adjusting to a new position. That's one thing. I also I saw Vanga Ioana get beat a couple more times than I expected to against Oregon as well. It's just I don't know if it's a confidence thing. I don't know if it's communication. I don't know if it's Andy Kotelnicki needs to let them just pin their ears back and get after it in the run game. I don't know what it is, but that group, honestly, for me is the key moving forward. I think when you ask me what has to change, what has to fix in this quote unquote second season, which you're absolutely right exists, I think it's the offensive line. And I don't know what it is. Maybe they need to get TJ Shanahan or Cooper Cousins in there. I don't know if that'll happen. Maybe it's something we can ask James about later in the week. I think that is the number one reason why there seems like Drew Allar, Nick Singleton are overthinking, because nothing's come easy for Penn State, and it starts up front.
Yeah.
And I think that is my key right now when you see what happened against Oregon.
Penn State fans, remember these 3 games. They have a little time, but the trip to Iowa with and with all the things we've just talked about, the slow starts, the issues on third down, issues on first down, not getting the ball enough to your true playmakers. You got to go at Iowa, you got to go at Ohio State, and you got Indiana coming in. Max, I think 4 teams from the Big Ten are going to go into the playoff. It's going to be Oregon. It's going to be Ohio State. And I think that Penn State is in direct competition with a very good Indiana team. And I would not rule out either the Bielemas or, with the way that they play defense, the Michigan Wolverines, which Penn State is not going to see them. They seem to know how to beat Ohio State. So that's why when I say a second loss could be perilous, I don't see a world in which more than 4 Big Ten teams get into the playoff. I don't even know what the rules are, but I think it's going to be 4. And I think with the loss to Oregon, I think we know who 2 of them are. I feel pretty good. I know that Indiana's got to play Oregon. I know they got to play Penn State, and there's going to be a round robining going on. But I think there's some contenders for those last 2 spots. And what we've seen from Penn State, if they continue to look like this, they continue to look like the Penn State team that not only played against Oregon, but played the way they did in the non-conference schedule. I don't think they're the 4th best team in the Big Ten, and that's why I have a lot of concerns about them making the tournament.
Yeah, I think it's very fair. I'll also add, I think slow starts. I think people are putting way too much positive stock in a bye week before the Oregon game. I don't think it's a good thing unless, like I said this when I was talking
Yeah,
to
yeah,
some friends heading into on Saturday before I went into the stadium. I think when your team is already healthy, as Penn State was, a bye week can only be a bad thing because your offensive and defensive lines haven't hit an opponent in a while. Like
yeah.
they lose their edge. I think that's a real thing. And well, it's also not to get too into the weeds here, but UCLA and Northwestern are kind of like pseudo bye weeks anyway.
Yeah, they're like pseudo Florida internationals.
Right. And so when you're talking about those two games before going on the road at Kinnick, which
Yeah, they got
might
6 bye
be
weeks this year, is what you're trying to say. I agree.
basically is what I'm getting at. And then the other bye week is right before Ohio State. I don't think those are good things. I don't think the way this schedule is playing out for Penn State is a good thing. I just Iowa is going to be a big test. Kinnick is maybe the hardest place to play. Penn State, Ohio State, and Kinnick all have, in my opinion, an argument there. That game is going to probably you could get way ahead here, which James Franklin will hate that I'm doing, but I think you're thinking the same thing, Bob. I think that game at Iowa is really the one that Penn State fans have to circle and say, depending on how this goes, we're going to know if Penn State really has the chops or not.
If they want to plot around and if it's a game late in the third quarter and the defense starts to get tired, they're absolutely going to be life or death to win that game. And that they did not learn their lesson. They did not change. They did not specifically. James Franklin and his coaching staff did not listen to you and I about what they need to do on offense, whether it's the skilled players or whether it's a different approach on first down or whether it's or whether it's how you're going to use or how you all this talk about building depth and you don't use it in a big game. I mean, it just seems like it's like a big circle. Like they justify maybe giving up some points against non-conference teams because they're going to play depth players, and then they feel good about the fact they did play depth players and they didn't cover, and they get the fan base mad at them, and then they lose to Oregon, and then they say, well, the reason Zakee Wheatley played 111 snaps was it was Oregon, and what we really need. It's a carousel. It is a carousel of curiosity. I'm going to coin that term more than once. I just don't. At some point, you got to commit. This is not any other year. This is the year that you're all in. Spent a lot of money. You've pinned your hopes to Drew Allar. I'm not saying that he isn't better than Bo Prabula, although I'm starting to get a little bit curious. I'm still watching Bo, but I just don't know. You've made your bed. Do you want to sleep in it, or do you want to change the sheets between the Iowa game? I guess would be one way to put it. But Max, now we somehow managed for a UCLA Week podcast to get into 44 minutes of talk, and we didn't even really mention the Bruins. I'm kind of proud of us. But is there anything other than the fact that you and Johnny are going live? You and Johnny McGonigal are going live on Thursday. Any last things you want to get off your chest with regard to the game or James's presser before we wrap it up?
I just want to quickly respond to your last comments there. I am still in the camp that Drew Allar is the right choice over Bo Prabula. Mm-hmm. I don't think Missouri has had a chance to showcase anything yet. I think Drew, my stock is way down on Drew right now. Did not play well in that game, has not played well in big games at all, but I still absolve him a little bit because of other issues on offense. I'm waiting to see if maybe late in the season that potential can change. And the last point that I want to make is, like I said, kind of felt like we saw a shift in Penn State and James Franklin's style last year after losing to Ohio State. It seemed like he said, yes, this team can win a national championship. We need to turn around how we coach, how we approach this. And it worked. I mean, they got to the semifinal and came 3 points from a national championship appearance. I just think that shift has to happen again this year. And I'll be curious down the stretch if it happens.
There's just two things missing from a very well thought out and a very strong argument. That Penn State team had Tyler Warren and Abdul Carter.
Yes.
I don't see. If you want to call deny Batman, I don't see his Robin on defense, and I just don't see a skill player anywhere near as freaky as Tyler Warren is killing people in the NFL. Like it's like not even close. He is the best tight end in the NFL. I mean, I think you can call it, but
I'm wearing my Bears hat. I can't believe they took Colson Loveland over him.
I just don't know. I think if you're James Franklin, they kind of righted the ship, and those are two good guys to right the ship with. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they have a second guy with Denai and all those things. I think I'm going too long, but I think that hopefully the coaching staff learned a lesson coming out of the Oregon game, especially the offensive coaches, more so than the defensive coaches.
Yep.
Like you gotta feed the guys who deserve to eat. The other guys, they can wait for the scraps. You remember, when I was a kid, Max, they would have a big Thanksgiving with my relatives, and all the adults would sit at the big table, and they had that little kids table where everyone didn't really like vegetables, and they got a little turkey, and they ate like 7 pounds of dessert.
I still sit at the kids' table at Thanksgiving.
So. I think that's the picture I'm painting. Like who is at the Thanksgiving parents' table where the adults are on this Penn State offense, and who should be at the kids' table? I think you got to make a decision.
It's Katron Allen. Bottom line, he is not Tyler Warren, but he's probably the closest thing this year that they have to him.
And Devontae Ross. It's those two and everyone else. There's a couple others, and the rest of the guys got to eat at the kids' table. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think that's fair.